Hey guys, welcome to a new video. Like, comment and subscribe if you enjoy. Without any further interruptions, enjoy the What If. Chapter 4 Findings. The docks of the Land of Water looked like they could use some sprucing up from what Naruto could see, as the place had rotten wood for landing areas, rats running around, and the people walking around that would sell out their own mother for a candy bar. Despite this and the many other troubles in water and the village hidden in the mist, people still came to this land of turmoil. The week-long trip over to Water Country had been satisfactory for Naruto, as no one had bothered him despite only being a simple yet scary-looking kid in their eyes. He guessed it was due to his appearance and how terrifying it made him look that frightened the more dangerous-looking people on the ship. No doubt they had assumed him to be one of the young mercenaries looking for battle, glory, and constant death that the conflict in this land possessed. The unrest in water called for many mercenaries to join sides that could potentially pay the most, creating a hole of chaos that needed to be closed. The only way to end bloodshed is to have one who can create even more to get their attention. Naruto. That's where we come in, said Kenpachi, already feeling the hunger to kill people sooner than expected. I know, Kenpachi-san, but before we spill the blood of others, let's drop off the remains of the one we did spill, thought Naruto, as the ship slowed its movement into the harbor of Water Country until it reached a complete stop. With what we drop off that is in our possession, the conflicts we will get into will be limitless. I love it, said Kenpachi, feeling the proverbial itch to kill that he wanted to scratch grow even more. I'm sure you do, Kenpachi, but you must still control yourself, even if it's only a little bit longer, thought Zangetsu in Naruto head, sitting in the mindscape on the hill reading a good book, The Art of War, by Sun Tzu, while sipping some herbal tea. As Kenpachi sat in a tree on that hill that gave Zangetsu his shade for reading his book, Naruto wondered about Hinata and how she would react to his letter. All I can do is hope for the best, thought Naruto, hoping that Hinata's mind still held the purity of an open mind and not poisoned by hate. Hyuga compound. Several days ago. It was morning when Hinata had been awakened by the three-tailed black fur-covered fox, and it was because of the fact that she was literally nose for nose with the creature that she almost let out a scream. Or would have had the fox not seen it and put a paw on her mouth and dropping the white envelope on her forehead, making such an option for the Hyuga heiress postponed, as the smell of ramen hit her nose, meaning only one thing. Naruto was the one who sent the fox to her. After blinking several times, the girl slowly reached for the envelope as to not instigate a possible altercation with the black-furred fox. When she picked it up off her forehead, she saw the fox blink at her once and remove its paw from Hinata's mouth before backing up away to show it was not a threat to her. Carefully, Hinata opened the envelope, wondering if this was some dream, and found that a letter was inside that apparently was addressed to her. Naruto-kun sent me a letter. Be still, my beating heart, thought Hinata, wondering what the contents of the letter entailed before opening it up fully. Dearest Hinata Haim, as you may now know, I am no longer wanted in the very village that has given birth to me so many years ago. I had hoped against hope that certain events would arise to prove that I am friend and not foe to those whose hearts and minds are closed by their hate. However, I find that such things are not the facts, but rather the opposite, as was the case with Hatake Tem driving his original jutsu into my chest. Like the other villagers and his fellow ninjas that follow such hated reasons as they do, Hatake Tem is no longer a man, or sensei for that matter, that can be trusted. Just between you and me, I think he reads that perverted book of his because he's secretly gay and provokes Lee's sensei to see him move in that green spandex. Talk about an eyesore though, considering Kakashi only has one normal eye. Maybe it's not. Now back to what I was saying. I know you are not one of these people that hate me, which is one of the reasons I confide to you now, if only through one way, in this letter. By now the council that has been the bane of my existence has decided to revoke the law made by the third Hokage about the demon inside of me. It is again that I hope against all hope that you will see that I am not the demon everyone sees me as, and that I am who I always have been, or at most tried to be. I have always known of your feelings for me, Hinata Haim, and for the record I would have gladly returned them to you if not for your unknown side your father chose in regards to my demon. Not to mention the Hyuga elder, council, and the villager or ninjas around us may have tried to destroy what we would have had. I had to play the fool to get them to see I was no threat, and yet they still pursued the notion I was, even when I saved them from Subaku no Gara during the sound invasion. Yes, I was the one who defeated Gara, not Sasuke Tem, and you can rub it in his face later. Provide that Neji or Lee is around in case the Uchiha tries something to hurt you, since he most likely would. As for the demon inside of me, you need not fear him as you think, since he's helping me on my journey to be stronger. If anyone is to blame, it was those damn Uchihas, since Kyuubi, or rather his real name Zangetsu, was only coming to Konoha to remove that all-cheating eye of a bloodline, since he created it after mutating the Byakugan of a branch member of the Hyuga family. I think his name was Hyuga Madara or something like that, who got upset about the usage and abuse of the cage bird seal. This is further proof that the damn seal on your family needs to be removed, seeing as we don't need a repeat of history. I better wrap this up since it's getting late. I can't tell you where I'm going, since if this is ever found will get you in trouble with a lot of people and even more, who are after me. Know that I am safe and I think of you always, no matter where I am or how deep of a mess I make. When I do return to Konoha, know that it's going to be big and I'll make them all know not to forget little old me. Though when I return I may look different, as well as noticeably taller than you could imagine if what I am told is correct. Eventually down the road you may hear of a great and terrifying name that I am going to give myself on my journey to wherever it is I go in the world. I want you to know that if and when you hear this name that you know it's me and no one else. On the battlefields I walk I will be simply known as Uzumaki Kenpachi. At least, that's what I'm hoping for anyway, since you never know what names people will give you that you don't want them to. Until we meet again, my sweet Hinata Haim. Sincerely, Uzumaki Naruto. P.S. If and when the Tem wakes up, make sure Tsunade Ba-chan prevents Sasuke from advancing through the council's power. If they did, it will be very bad publicity in other places around them. It would like they favor a traitor over a hero, making them look like garbage in the eyes of others. Have the old hag trick them into having the Tem take the next Chunin exams in order to prove everyone wrong. Use the council's egos against them. P.P.S. I love you with all my heart and soul. After reading that last part, poor Hinata fainted back onto her bed with steam coming out of her ears, while the three-tailed fox shook his head before going, poof, to its next run. Ninja Academy. Same morning, Yumino Iruka was not having a good day, as the students he had been teaching had done rather poorly this week after all that had happened. When break time came for the kids, he would occasionally watch them from his classroom window and strain his hearing on some of the children he was teaching. Apparently the children had become divided on the complete subject of all the villages' hatred these past 12+ years in Konoha, that was Uzumaki Naruto. Many of his students had asked him questions about the boy he saw as his little brother, and found that some of the parents of these children deserved some time with Ibiki, or if wanted to be cruel, get Anko to lay down some punishment. Konohamaru and the core still were loyal to Naruto to the end, having been the only three in the class that were close to Naruto like Iruka was. What Iruka found to be really an incredible sight was, while most of the kids in the beginning to hate Naruto like their parents, that Konohamaru played on the logic of the what-if scenario. The possibility of Naruto still remaining loyal to Konoha if the villagers had honored the fourth Hokage's dying wish. Such a response got some of the children thinking that their own parents were at fault, creating a counter-wave in the younger generation still able to see the light and future errors they might make. For Iruka it was a start, as the younger generation still had a shot of not being poisoned like most of the adults in the Leaf. Right now Iruka was teaching the class the history of Konoha and about how the village's own first Hokage could manipulate nature itself to grow under his feet. Like Naruto's generation of students, these kids were bored out of their mind and wanted to get out of the classroom to enjoy life. Or rather they did, until a poof was heard and a large three-tailed fox appeared on top of Iruka's desk, getting a yelp from the Chunin and screams from the class. However, the fox himself was not interested in the kids or the Chunin instructors that came in hearing their screams of terror, but rather Yumino Iruka himself. "You are Yumino Iruka, correct?" said the fox, looking at the man's pale face that gave a small nod to the question. "Iruka, get away before it bites your head off," said one of the Chunin instructors, who readied a weapon to strike at the fox. "Silence, mortal. I am but a summons of my master, and he wants me to give this one known as Iruka something, though why I do not know," said the fox, removing the leaf headband from his neck and placing it on the teacher's work table before leaving in a poof of smoke. "Iruka, are you all right?" said the teacher, seeing Iruka's dazed-off look before reaching for the one thing that connected him to Naruto. "That headband. I gave that to Naruto when he graduated," said Iruka, holding it in his hands, finding a horizontal scratch mark on it, breaking his heart even more. Hokage Tower Council meeting room moments later. Tsunade was not having another good morning, as the Uchiha has awakened only several days ago and the council majority were eager to begin his training. What's more was that they even considered promoting him to Chunin right away. They figured it was the best way to please the Uchiha into thinking he was closer to reaching Itachi's level of power. Tsunade, however, had totally disagreed and argued that unless the Uchiha works for his strength, then when he faces Itachi later on, he'll be weaker than ever and get himself killed. While that held some sway with the more cautious council members that were all for making the Uchiha stronger, it didn't help with the situation regarding Naruto. When word got out of Kisami's death by Jiraiya's spy network, the report the Sannin handed her said that the former 7 swordsman of the mist died painfully at the hands of a nearly unnamed boy. This child was rumored to be wearing a strange mask of a fox-shaped skull with red lines for whisker marks and also had massive chakra reserves to create the necessary attack to destroy the Shark Man. The only name that the spy network could inform in regards to a name was the last name being Uzumaki, but an apparent first name strangely enough being Kenpachi. Not only that, but Jiraiya's spy network had sustainable evidence that proved that the boy now known as Uzumaki Kenpachi had wounded Uchiha Itachi, Kabuto, killed the Sound Anbu with Kabuto, and the entire group of Konoha hunter ninja, all in a massive blast of chakra. Apparently after hearing this, the fools thought to put Naruto into the bingo book as the first ever triple S class missing ninja in all of Konoha and all of the elemental nations. Not even the Akatsuki leader had such a rank. You senile old bastards. Do you really think putting such rank on Naruto, much less the massive bounty that could most likely cripple this village financially in its current state, is the answer to our troubles? Said Tsunade, as the book stated the main and only reason Naruto was such a rank, which was because of the Kyuubi, the infamous 9-tailed fox demon he contained in him. Watch your tongue, Tsunade-sama, this council will not stand for it, said Danzo, getting a nod from Homura, Tsume, and Yasha, who supported such actions wholeheartedly. Like I care what a bunch of arrogant fools thinks of me. I'm the Hokage around here, not you or anyone else, said Tsunade, glaring at the fools this council had become with only a few on her side for support. True. But all the same, the hunter ninjas are still required to do their job whether we placed him in the bingo book or not, said Yasha, as she smirked, knowing that the last thing the hunter ninjas they would dispatch to find the demon would be to return him alive, or in one piece for that matter. Before Tsunade could retort, a poof came on the round table desk of the meeting room, and the 3-tailed black fox now carrying the dried blood-covered box appeared. Before anyone could remotely react other than jumping out of their seats in fright, the fox looked at the slug Sannin Hokage for a good 5 seconds and then placed the load he was carrying down for all of them to see. Here is a small gift from my master. Enjoy, said the fox before going poof before everyone's eyes moments later, just as the Anbu swarmed the room wondering what was going on. What in blazes is that smell? Said Tsume, her dog-like senses in her nose were burning under the stench coming from the box. I can take a guess, said Kakashi, looking at the note on the box and then showed it to the others, shocking both parties for and against Naruto. Haruno Yasha being the more stupid one of the group that day opened the box only to see the crushed bodies of Konoha hunter ninja, all with looks of pain on their faces. Oh my god, said Yasha, running to the nearest window to open it and puke out of. You see. This is why that damn demon needs to be killed, said Tsume, seeing one of the lower members of the Inuzuka clan in the box, who she knew couldn't use dogs for ninja tracking as well as the others in the family and thus didn't take his canine companion on the hunt for Naruto. This wouldn't have happened if people in the village honored the fourth's dying wish, said Tsunade, eyeing the group of council members before glancing at the box filled with human remains, wondering what was going through the mind of the boy she saw as her surrogate little brother. Land of Water. Present time. Naruto walked along the docks heading for his destination with the daimyo of water to offer his services in saving this dying country rather than keeping it together. He knew countless people tried to ask the man for help or offer their services for shelter in his very illustrious home, whether it was a position as a bodyguard or a less than dignified way to staying warm. The latter of positions being more for the female variety than male. Stupid fat pig of a man is so corrupt he even makes Gato look like a boy scout, and his brother, who is the Mizukage of Mist, is no better, thought Naruto, gripping his sword at his waist, wanting to deliver some well-deserved justice. I agree with you there, kid. I say we make an example out of him later on when the time is right, but first let's provide a little divide and conquer strategy into this little drama, said Kenpachi, knowing the best way to divide brothers is through their supposed loyalty to each other. That and paranoia. Since we're going to the lard ass of a daimyo first, I say we begin our strategy with him, since he and Gato are so alike it won't be difficult to raise the paranoia in his mind. The mere thought of his brother planning to overthrow him for more funding in Mist is not something the man will ignore, thought Naruto, having seen pictures of the man on the dock, telling those who read it to swear loyalty to him and not the rebel factions that had occasionally sprouted it up. The trick with the Lord of Water is that he will take anyone with a blade and a person who can use it to kill people with, but have a knack for detecting deception and disloyalty from those around him. It's because he lacks this ability that Water Country has become so damaged among the other great elemental nations of the world. We suggest that his Mizukage of a brother is creating these rebel factions to keep the hidden Mist village funded. However, because such things are not giving Mist the funding it needs, the Water Shadow is planning a backstabbing to have both titles for himself. We would then say the idea would not only allow his brother to get public support in the promises of changes in the country, but we also suggest the man we're going to let out certain secrets. The fool knows as anyone, if the people learn of such thing it would give the Mizukage even more power over the people to overthrow the daimyo, thought Zangetsu, reading a part of the Art of War, with Sun Tzu's idea on how to pit the best of friends against each other. I see. Well, let's get moving. It will take another 2 days or so to get to the man, and when I do I will probably have to kill someone to show I'm good enough to be hired. Hopefully it's some stupid asshole who deserves to suffer, thought Naruto, knowing there were more than enough of the type to go around and kill without hesitation. And if it's not, thought Zangetsu, looking up from his book and at the empty chair as if Naruto were actually in front of him. I could always become the next daimyo of Water Country, if only for a little while at the very least, thought Naruto before he started laughing out loud while getting looks of worry from people around him. What new psychopath had entered their part of the world? Hidden village of Iwa. Did our spies find him yet? Said the Tsuchikage at the Anbu in front of him, who was now looking slightly nervous. Not officially, Tsuchikage-sama, but our spies have heard rumors of a boy wearing a fox skull on his face that left the port of Wave Country. We sent some recon Junin there to investigate in secret and learned from the destination manifest logs that the ship is headed to Water Country, said the Anbu, whose face had a fossil of a bird on it. The land of water, where the ways of the sword are used more than anywhere else in the shinobi world. Did the Junin team examine the battle where that Akatsuki member died fighting Naruto? Said the Tsuchikage, tapping his chin in thought of what the boy was planning. Yes. There were still some remains of bloodstains on the ground, but other than those traces of blood we found no weapons that might have been used in the strike, said the Anbu, wondering where this line of questioning was going. Odd. According to the information regarding that fight, the boy destroyed Kisame and his sword, but there is not a trace of it to be found. Correct, said the Tsuchikage to his subordinate, who nodded quickly. Yes, nothing was left. The Junin team we sent is the best we have, Tsuchikage-sama, and they were at the site the entire day looking for anything, only to find nothing that hasn't already been placed in the report, said the Anbu, having read it himself several times just to be sure. The Uzumaki child is up to something, and it's clearly in the land of water somewhere, even if we can't see what it is. Unfortunately, we have no spies in Water Country due to the turmoil, and if we send one and gets caught could unite them against us. Tell me, does Kumo know the full extent of Uzumaki's exact heritage? Said the Tsuchikage, puzzled at the child's behavior, and that knowing if Kumo found out they could go with its own port, send spies into Water Country, as they have had to do several times before the place went to hell in a handbasket. Not that we know of, but it will only be a certain amount of time before they do, and if they should discover it they could use this opportune time to hire Uzumaki to their side, should they decide to go to war with Konoha. They were never really satisfied with what happened with the whole incident in the Leaf when Hyuga Hiyashi's twin brother gave his life to prevent a war. They would be itching to get some Konoha blood in their ranks if that blood hated its home enough to fight them, said the Anbu, knowing that there was some unrest in Kumo with their demon vessel being hunted by that strange Akatsuki organization. Keep our spies out for the boy when he comes back. I don't care if he comes back in 5 to 10 years from now. I want the son of the 4th Hokage on our side. It needs to be done through the means of negotiations and persuasion of revenge against the leaf, not by the use of force," said the Tsuchikage, knowing that if the boy that would become a man in years to come, if not already, was attacked by his men, it could spell disaster for Iwa in the future. If the kid could destroy Kisame now, imagine what he could do in a few years when he came back from Water Country. Water Country 4 days later. The way to see the Lord of Water was not an easy task as Naruto originally thought, as the goal of at least 2 days had now become that of 4. Why? Because everywhere he went there were bandits, thieves, and other mercenaries coming out of the woodwork trying to attack and take whatever it may be that Naruto might possess on him. Suffice to say, Kenpachi was quite happy as Naruto swung his sword, though in normal form, killing the fools that attacked him with ease. They were so weak they proved little challenge, if not at all, to the great warrior, and that in itself was displeasing. He took what he could from the bodies before incinerating them with a fire jutsu he learned one night after sneaking into the shinobi library in Konoha when the bastard guards wouldn't let him in earlier that day. Unfortunately, all Naruto could manage on taking from the now bloodied bodies he had killed were money, a few kunai, and a storage scroll that was empty. Not that it mattered. Naruto felt he could always fill it with anything he wanted given the chance or need to. However, for now Naruto would use it by storing Kisame's bagged head into it before he simply rolled the scroll up and walked on without so much as a second thought to the bloodbath he had created. After many hours of traveling, the sun had begun to set and Naruto decided it was time to rest for the day, since he figured it was one more day to the daimyo's home. Walking off the trail, Naruto noticed some bandits had engaged in fight with another group over some sort of dispute, though what exactly he wasn't sure. The way they act like animals, they all deserve to be put down like them, thought Naruto, getting tired of their fighting and killing of one another, as he marched towards them sword in hand. He was so caught up in his desire to kill all the rabid-acting bandits, that Naruto never did see the little innocent fox-like eyes watching him curiously from behind a nearby bush close to the soon-to-be slaughter group. The silent figure watched with awe as Naruto sliced through the two surprised groups like they were nothing but meat for the real animal lurking in the places around him. Seeing as the fire was still roaring despite his one-sided fight with the bandits, Naruto decided he would rest here for the night before finding a spring or riverbed to wash the blood of his clothes, since if he came in smelling like blood in front of the daimyo, it could get him kicked out. Sitting down on the ground with his back against a nearby tree, Naruto looked around at his handiwork for a moment, while Kenpachi was praising the boy for bringing out the term massacre to describe this should a person see it. Zangetsu just simply shook his head and smiled to himself, as he continued reading his book while trying to understand the other resident taking up Naruto's mindscape. All the while wondering how he allowed such an entity to have such an influence over his vessel. As this little debate inside the minds within Naruto's own, the said boy finally noticed that something, or rather someone, was crawling up to him. Now in front of Naruto was a little girl with brownish hair wearing a yellow and light green kimono with curious eyes of a fox, a tail, and ears, gazing and touching his sword. "Where did you come from, little one? Don't you know that's a weapon I use to kill people with?" said a surprised Naruto, because he never sensed the child. For one thing and another, she didn't seem afraid of him or the carnage he had created in the bandits' former encampment. That, and she was now laughing at the spot of blood on the open palm of her hand like it was something to laugh at. "It's a half-demon fox, Naruto. She is just a young kid, who doesn't know any better and is a clean slate when it comes to raising," thought Zangetsu, knowing that leaving the girl in this place would be disastrous to her mental state if left alone. "What's your name, little one?" said Naruto, taking his mask off and narrowing his eyes at the little girl, as he had a suspicion of what happened to her parents before he arrived. The little child in question looked up at the much larger giant of one questioningly and with curiosity at why Naruto asked for her name. In further response to his question, she tilted her slightly to the side as if wondering what he was talking about, thus confirming her suspicions about what had happened to her parents. "She wasn't given a name yet, it seems," said Kenpachi, looking at the girl with his own vision, and noticed the hilt from Samahata glow in response to her presence. Naruto had nearly forgotten about that damn thing as Zangetsu had picked it up after he laid down the instructions to his summons in delivering those 3 items. When the boy asked Zangetsu on why he took the hilt that belonged to the once infamous sword of Samahata, the demon fox just told him it may prove useful in the long run. It appeared that the demon lord was right. You don't have a name, do you? Said Naruto, getting a shake of a head as a no from the little girl, who looked at Naruto curiously, feeling a hint of familiarity to her father's side of the family from what she could still recall of fur-covered man. You should give her a name, said Zangetsu, appearing beside Naruto, deciding would be the best time to intervene in his own way. Very well. You little one will be called known as Uzumaki. Uzumaki, said Naruto, pausing, wondering what name to give the girl. Kusajishi Yakiru, said a voice from hilt of the once deadly Samahata, glowing pinkish around the hilt, which got the attention of Naruto. Should I? Said Naruto, looking at Zangetsu, who nodded, seeing that the hilt was meant for the little fox girl. Go for it, kid. You already gave her your last name, meaning you are going to be related in some manner. Consider yourself a single parent now, thought Kenpachi, smiling at the image of Naruto, paling slightly at being a single father raising his little girl. Composing himself, Naruto focused on the still wide-eyed half-demon fox girl, wondering what going on inside his head. As I said before, your name, little one, will be Uzumaki Kusajishi Yakiru. This is how it is pronounced, said Naruto, writing the name on the ground so the girl now named Yakiru could understand how it looked if written. Yachiru. My name is Yakiru, said the fox girl, who seemed to physically brighten if only slightly in front of him before looking at him with a smile. And, from this day forward, I will no longer go by the name of Uzumaki Naruto, that has given me nothing but the hatred of others since I was born. I shall not and will not call myself after a spiral or a fish paste used on ramen toppings. I will not let people make fun of me for all the times I had failed because of their hate. Back home, when everyone I saw spoke of their or other names, it was filled with life and purpose, while mine gave me emptiness. From this day forward, Yakiru, you, and the two entities that are inside me as my witnesses, I hereby change my full name to Uzumaki Zaraki Kenpachi. It will be the name that deserves to be given to only the strongest of all swordsmen recognized in mist, Suna, Kumo, wave, sound, Akatsuki, and more importantly the very place that hates me. Konoha, said Naruto, now renamed Kenpachi, getting a nod from Zangetsu and the spirit of Kenpachi as well, who just laughed loudly inside his vessel's head. Strangely enough, if a person listened in the distance and the wind was blowing just right, one could hear such laughter echoing into the night. At an undisclosed location. So Kisame is dead, I see. Then the rumors of the fight were not as exaggerated as I first thought, said Pain, the leader of Akatsuki, looking at the others and a still healing Itachi, who had bandages over his wounds and was now breathing silently yet noticeably heavy. I guess the kid finally had enough of Konoha and decided to break free. Not that I blame him, since they were so cruel to him despite being the prison of the beast, said Deidara, who found that out of all the nine-tailed beasts that needed capturing, the fox would be the most difficult. It's more than that. When he spoke to me and the others, he changed his original name from Naruto to Kenpachi, said Itachi, seeing the others shiver at such a fear-inspiring name worthy of the Akatsuki ranks. The boy is changing at an unknowing pace, and if not controlled or stopped could one day kill all of us. Since Kisame is dead, I'll have to appoint a new member to support you, Itachi, until your injuries heal, said Pain, who got a nod from Itachi, though the look on his former prey turned predator that was still edged into his mind. What's the plan now? Said Hidan, knowing that he and Kakuzu had to find their demon vessel of a prey and soon before they lost her trail. You and Kakuzu will go to the land of water and find the two-tailed cat demon vessel, which has left the services of Kumo and has already landed in water country to escape us in the chaos that surrounds it. You must wait until the opportunity presents itself to engage her, and only her, when the time is right to strike. If you see the Kyuubi vessel is with her, or if you see her join him, then leave immediately and report back. If you do engage them, try to escape at all costs, but don't hesitate to take a chance in neutralizing either vessel so they can be used for later, said Pain, knowing that fighting one of the nine-tailed beasts would be difficult, but two of them would be trouble. Yes sir, said Kakuzu, as this would be great for both him and the organization should they manage to subdue both vessels, since they could kill the fox vessel after the initial extraction before collecting on the heft bounty promised by Konoha. With that, the two members disappeared into the shadows. Do you think they will succeed, Leader Sama? Said Zetsu, looking at the head of the organization, wondering if sending just two members of the group would be enough. If they use what skills they have, then yes, they will. However, It's not just the two-tailed cat that they should worry about, but rather her presence is there as well, said Pain, who got looks of disgust from the others knowing just WHO was in water country. I thought she was dead, said Itachi, frowning at Pain, wondering why he was never told about her so he could be sent to kill the woman. No, she wants to remain hidden for now, but if she were to ever meet up with either the Nibi, Kyuubi, or Kami, forbid both vessels, then it would take over half of us to win, said Pain, getting looks of worry from the others. Konoha Uchiha compound. Sasuke had retreated for the night to his home, avoiding the fangirls and their mothers, who tried to convince him to go on a date with them to find the girl that will one day help the clan grow. As before, he brushed them off, saying he didn't care for any of them and that only strong women are what he desired in a future spouse. Now in his bed asleep, the Uchiha had hoped his mind would grant him dreams of him killing his brother for the wrongs that had been committed against the clan. That when the dream was over his ancestors would be proud of him and the bloody remains of Itachi were at his feet with victory in his right blood-covered hand. Sadly for the Uchiha, unlike real life in Konoha, he can't always get what he wants. Sasuke's dream. Sasuke found himself in total darkness, as the place around him was covered in a thick mist or fog that he couldn't see his feet below him. What is this place? Thought Sasuke, looking around, since was not like his usual dreams or even his nightmares. Why, if it isn't the all-great Uchiha prodigy of Atem, said a cold voice coming from a now-appearing Naruto in the orange jumpsuit that Sasuke had last seen him in. Naruto, said Sasuke, wondering why the dead last was in his head. Surprised. You shouldn't be, considering all we've been through together, the fights that we went through together, and the backstabbing people we fought for together. Tell me, has Hatake Tem taught you anything of value, or is the thought of Orochimaru licking you up and down with his tongue at night calling to you? Said Naruto, his voice filled with a great deal of venom and hate towards the Uchiha. If you must know, Kakashi-sensei is on the council now as a substitute member for the Uchiha clan, and the majority of them have decided to groom me to be the next Hokage, said Sasuke, smirking at the end, expecting the Naruto in front of him to be infuriated for taking his dream away. Surprisingly, Naruto just smirked, a fox-like smirk. They want you, a selfish traitor to the village, and a man who would sell out Konoha to Orochimaru at the drop of the hat. Hokage, said Naruto, disbelieving yet slightly angry at the prospect. Yep, I guess they figured once I get enough power to earn that title I'll be able to beat Itachi and restore my clan to its greatness, said Sasuke, giving his "I'm superior to you" smirk that he knew Naruto hated. Tell me, Uchiha Tem, how is it you can be the Hokage, if everyone who would follow you is already dead? Said Naruto, his blue eyes turning red with slits and a heavy growl left his throat. Dead? What are you talking about, loser? Said Sasuke, activating his Sharingan while he tried to ignore the fog-like mist turning blood red around him, while Naruto himself was generating that orange-reddish chakra from before. Look around, said Naruto, snapping his fingers, and the darkness lifted, revealing that village hidden in the leaves that was Konoha was ablaze with destruction. Sasuke looked in horror, as there were bodies of civilians and ninja alike everywhere, torn apart with blood staining all 6 monument heads. However, what really got the Uchiha's undivided attention was his supposed face on the monument, only it had Itachi's corpse hanging from it with a sword through the chest, bleeding on the center of Sasuke's granite forehead. It didn't help that the sky was raining blood and body parts. What the hell? Said Sasuke, turning to Naruto, who just now sat high above the Uchiha on a large 9-tailed fox that growled menacingly at him. Your fool of a sensei of yours, Hatake Kakashi, made a very big mistake in trying to kill me in my vessel. For I'm the one. WHO does the killing, said the 9-tailed fox before using all 9 of its tails, creating a massive white light explosion that surrounded the Uchiha, as he screamed out in pain at being torn apart. End dream. Sasuke awakened, sitting straight up, screaming in fright at the events that took place in his head for what seemed just mere moments before. Never before, even with Itachi and the slaughtering of his clan, had Sasuke screamed so loud in his entire life from one of his horrible nightmares. That in itself was something that terrified him most of all. As Uchiha Sasuke now knew of someone and or something who was more frightening than Uchiha Itachi. Grabbing his temple and rubbing it to remove the headache, Sasuke tried to turn on the light next to his bed, ignoring the wet feeling on his shirt, believing it was sweat from his worst nightmare to date. When he did find the light he turned it on only to pale in horror at his room and what was around him that made him rethink that night Itachi killed the clan. There was blood everywhere. The room was covered in the stuff from the walls, to the floors, the ceiling and finally on his bed. On him. Uchiha Sasuke, the all-great never do anything wrong Uchiha prodigy of Konoha, was now covered head to toe in blood. Running to the bathroom and nearly slipping, if not for some chakra put to his feet, the Uchiha heir entered it and turned on the light as well, only to find the place covered in almost the same amount of blood as his bedroom. By this point the Uchiha wanted to scream again until he lost all strength in his voice to speak for the next 10 years and would have, had the room not darkened only to brighten, revealing the blood was no longer there. However, before Sasuke could even try to do anything or so much let out a sigh of relief that the blood was gone, his eyes were now stuck on the blood-covered writing now on the mirror that was appearing before him. Uchiha Sasuke, the next time we meet the blood on you and your clan's legacy will be for real. In the meantime, enjoy the ride into hell. It was then that Uchiha screamed for all he was worth, awakening everyone in the village of Konoha, who to some that mattered was an omen of things to come in the future. No one even suspected that a brown blood reddish cloaked figure was watching all of the ensuing panic from the fourth Hokage's head on the monument, smiling at the people acting like chickens that ran below like their heads were cut off. As quietly as the figure watched, the figure had left, all the while his smile expanding to such a degree if one were to see the figure, you could see his teeth were sharp and pointy like a dog. Or to be more precise, a fox. Land of Water. Morning the next day. Naruto, now renamed Kenpachi like his sword, awoke to find the half-demon fox girl he had named Yakiru, asleep and snuggling up to him in his lap. She looked quite content with herself being there from what the boy could determine from her happy face. As a daughter is protected by her father, thought Zangetsu, who alternated books from Sun Tzu to a book on taking care of young adopted children after arriving from his little visit to Konoha while Naruto slept with Kenpachi taking lookout duty. How can I be a father to someone when I'm a kid myself? Considering what's going to happen in 3 years, I can't exactly become father material at the moment, thought Naruto, leaning his back more against his would-be bed of a tree trunk. Come on kid, show some spine. If this kid can handle seeing you slaughter all those people before crawling up to you, touch your blood-covered sword, and then laugh, I'd say she won't really mind, said Kenpachi, who found himself strangely attached to this little fox kid himself, though it could have been because the girl was alone like Naruto was during his early years. The only difference now was Yakiru had someone and she wasn't receiving beatings from other people around her for being different. I don't mind taking care of her, it's just that I don't know how, thought Naruto, letting out a sigh, as he closed his eyes to think, only for them to open again about a minute later to feel a tug on his shirt. The girl was now amazingly awake and with life-filled eyes looking at him for attention, which Naruto didn't really know how to give since he never received any either. Are you hungry, Yakiru? Said Uzumaki Kenpachi, getting into warrior mode before he saw a quick nod from the girl in the hearing of two stomach, one being his go off that made them both blush in embarrassment. Letting out a laugh, Kenpachi patted her on the head before lifting her gently off his lap as he stood up and placed her on his left shoulder before handing her a ration bar he had tucked away. Yakiru didn't seem to mind as she clapped her tiny hands together several times before eating the meal, not minding the crappy taste. She also clearly enjoyed being able to see things at a much higher altitude than she did before when crawling around. Let's go, Ken-chan, said Yakiru, getting an odd eyebrow-raised look from Kenpachi while the sword spirit of Kenpachi just laughed at the nickname. This kid is incredible, I swear kid, even if she's not your daughter by blood she sure does deserve it by name. She's just as unpredictable as you were at that age, said the spirit of Kenpachi in Naruto's head, recalling the memory of the boy and how he had defiled the Hokage monument as one of the moments. Your sword spirit is right. The power inside of her is incredible even for a half-demon fox kid her age. With the proper training she could be a formidable warrior, thought a very impressed Zangetsu, sensing her chakra was above average of a normal half-demon. Though how it was possible Zangetsu did not know. Okay Yakiru, let's go. Hopefully we can find some place to eat soon, said Uzumaki Kenpachi, putting his mask back on and rushing off onto the nearby trail and headed to his destination, with Yakiru squealing with joy at going so fast and at such a height. Konoha. Several days later, Hinata was walking through the streets of the once great hidden village of the Leaf, now looking quite the opposite of his former glory. At the moment, Hinata felt lost without her Naruto-kun around pulling a prank, eating at his favorite ramen stand, or shouting how he was going to be the next Hokage. However, now she finds that such happiness that Naruto generated in this place like him, was no longer in Konoha. So many things had changed for the worst in her mind, as news from up top the Hokage Tower hit the people like an explosive tag covered in demonic chakra. Tsunade, under the pressure of the council, had informed them of what Naruto did to the Hunter Ninja team, the Sound Anbu, and how he killed Akatsuki member Hoshigaki Kisame. For Hinata and those that support Naruto, it was an amazing feat to accomplish and showed the boy was incredibly strong. Unfortunately, the vast majority of people in Konoha called for the council and Tsunade to send stronger ninja after the demon boy, as he was so openly called him. Especially after word got out about what happened at the Uchiha compound got out and what the Anbu arrived saw with the bloody message on the bathroom mirror still there. Speaking of Sasuke, the news of Naruto killing Kisame and the others burned him up inside, as Kisame was Itachi's partner in Akatsuki-related crimes. While Kisame himself was not as close to Itachi in terms of power, the Shark Man was not a weakling even in the slightest, which meant that Naruto was more powerful than Sasuke. Sakura and Ino were no better, as they told Sasuke all about Naruto's tenet and that the only reason Naruto won in the fight at the Valley of the End was because he was really a demon. That anyone else would have fallen at the Uchiha's precious, in their minds, feet where they felt Naruto belongs, since not even a demon deserved to be more powerful than an Uchiha prodigy like their Sasuke-kun. That was what bugged Hinata a lot about the two girls, is that no matter what, they would go so far as to use Naruto like a rag to clean the dirt of the Uchiha's good name. In fact, despite Naruto's wishes as stated in the letter, the girl had shown what Naruto sent her to the one person she trusted above all others. Yuhi Kurenai. When the Genjutsu mistress read it word for word, she looked down at the Hyuga girl before her and understood why Hinata had entrusted to her this information. If someone from the Hyuga clan that was loyal to the elders were able to get a hold of this, Hinata would in all likeliness be called a demon lover, or demon whore. She would most likely be cut off from the Hyuga clan and thrown out into the streets where people would know what happened before the girl even left. The Hyuga girl would then be at the mercy of the vast majority of a merciless populace, who would make Hinata's entire life a living hell. Not only that, but with the council majority that was now gaining more and more power, that made Tsunade nothing more than a figurehead. If they ever learned of this letter, then they would execute her, or even worse, those old Hyuga elders would have her breed with a traditionalized Hyuga. No doubt with one of the old elders himself, who was many years her senior, in order to give birth to a new potentially strong Hyuga heir. Kurenai had always known of the girl's crush turned to love for Naruto since she first caught the girl stalking him after a training ground exercise that finished in line with Kakashi's. The Junin sensei believed that if Hinata was intimate with anyone, it would be Naruto, who she found such happiness with. However, such happiness may now be out of Hinata's grasp by Tsunade, who had warned the girl secretly about Inuzuka soon trying to set up an arranged marriage with Hiashi for Kiba to marry Hinata into the Dog clan. Fortunately, Hiashi had refused, saying she was already taken and no amount of power from the council or his clan elders that they could create would stop him from denouncing such a thing. It was one of those rare times that Yuhi Kurenai was glad that Hyuga Hiashi, despite his mostly cold demeanor, had warmed up to his oldest daughter shortly after the Chunin exams when, ironically, Naruto had beaten Neji in the finals of the exam. Kurenai was also glad that Hiashi wasn't a fool either when it came to his daughter's affections for the now being hunted fox boy. She also knew that Kiba was hardly husband material, since he viewed Hinata like some sort of object or piece of meat to chew on. If Kami forbid they did get married, the Genjutsu mistress had no problem believing that Kiba would be very unfaithful to Hinata when he got bored with her. No doubt, like the Hyuga elders, the brash Inuzuka boy saw the poor Hyuga girl as a prized trophy used simply for breeding, and when she gave him children, he would just divorce her, and find some other girl to sink his canines into, leaving Hinata with nothing. Kurenai would have none of that. Hinata herself was grateful to her father and Kurenai for protecting her from such a fate before she involuntarily said she wanted to have Naruto's children when he returned. This of course raised the eyebrows of Hiashi and Kurenai, who saw blushing girl faint from sheer embarrassment, but if one were to look closely one would swear they saw a faint hint, if only that, of a nosebleed on her nose. Back to the present time though, as of right now, Hinata wanted the people around her to suffer for hurting her beloved, and she intended to target the fools she already knew were at the top of her list. Their names were Yamanaka Ino and Haruno Sakura. Hinata found them ironically where she planned to spring her trap, which was at the old ramen stand where Naruto would constantly eat. At first, Hinata was going to spring the trap in a quiet fashion since no one really looked out for poor timid Hinata, who would not so much hurt a fly then prank her fellow shinobi. How wrong people were. Don't people remember the old saying, "It's always the quiet ones"? However, the plan had deviated from the original when she saw Naruto's favorite stool had been desecrated and nearly ruined. It was then that Hinata noticed Ino and Sakura had smug looks on their faces as they ate their ramen, perfectly content on sticking it to the demon boy, if only in spirit and with the spite of what Naruto is in their minds. Hinata didn't know why she changed tactics, but in the end it worked out better than she hoped, as she had released a great amount of killer intent that wiped the content look on the other two girls' faces completely. "Hello Yamanaka. Hello Haruno," said Hinata, now sitting in her seat that was next to Naruto's desecrated stool of her beloved stood, as it also seemed to be the invisible wall between her and the two Uchiha-loving whores. They would screw the Uchiha in the street if he asked them to, or if it would give them high status, thought a very angry Hinata before she ordered a large bowl of beef ramen, which the co-owner Ayame went to make for her right before she glared at the other two for ruining her favorite customer private seat. "Why, if it isn't the demon lover? Have any nice dreams about your demon screwing you and giving you bastard children?" said Sakura, eyeing her and Ino's handiwork, knowing that the populace was on both their sides and that any type of complaints from the owner or his daughter could go away through persuasive means from the vast populace. "Better than that Uchiha you sluts would screw in front of everyone in Konoha. At least with my children they will have talent, while your worthless children will be tiny limp dick males or flat-chest female whores that you would have sell to the highest bid given by the council member just for status," said Hinata, who would never admit under pain of death to anyone was she had accidentally seen the Uchiha while searching for Naruto one day with her Byakugan, only to see Sasuke and through his clothing. When she did this, Hinata almost felt perverted, until she actually saw the package the boys carried between his legs. Or rather, from what she saw and measured in her mind, if it was correct, the lack thereof. What was even more funny to Hinata was when saw the small thing, as she had for all the right and curiosity-needing filled purposes of silently increasing chakra to her eyes. She saw past the tiny thing to the way the blood flowed through it, and Hinata noticed that it barely ever did. In other words, Uchiha Sasuke couldn't get his little tree to grow tall or stay that way, and Hinata bet it would be like that even if Naruto did his infamous harem jutsu on Sasuke while posing as a girl the Sharingan user might possibly liked. "What would you know about Sasuke-kun? I bet he's really packed down there, and with his amazing stamina he will probably take me for nights on end," said Ino, glaring at the Hyuga heiress with all her might, though it did little if nothing to affect Hinata. "Perhaps, if you were male and a homosexual," said Hinata, eating calmly, as if she were talking about the weather, while Sakura and Ino spit out their food, shocked at what Hinata was implying. "You take that back," yelled both girls at the same time, now off their seats, almost looking ready to attack the Hyuga, who was eating calmly and nearly done her ramen. "Make me, if you can," said Hinata, paying for her food, then standing up before glaring at them with such killer intent it froze the two in their place, allowing the Hyuga girl to make her move. Hinata had spent her time with Tsunade and Shizune for some time in the hospital, but not before she explained her plan to the two. It had taken some convincing on her part, but Hinata was able to get the two medics to help her to extract the ultimate punishment on the two girls. However, with Ino, such punishment may open her eyes, so Hinata was told to make sure the damage to her was temporarily, while for Sakura it was to be 100% permanent. Hinata only agreed to the terms so long as she could inflict maximum amount of pain on both of them when she did it. And inflicted the maximum amount of pain she did. Hinata had her hands charged full of chakra to such a degree if a skilled ninja were to see her hands, they would see the Hyuga heiress's hands had a wavy look around them. Not surprising though, as the chakra Hinata was letting out was almost visible due to the large amount of chakra in each hand. Without hesitation, Hinata moved with a speed that would make Rock Lee entirely green, only with envy, and aimed her deadly hands low. It would take Sakura another 5 minutes before she screamed in pain, and Ino a few more seconds later after Sakura to follow suit. By that time, Hinata was long gone and the two owners claimed they never saw anything as they were in the back of the store checking their ingredient inventory for making future ramen. Strangely enough, there was no recording of any receipt for a possible customer, who ate some beef ramen while the two girls sat in the stand themselves. When they were examined by Tsunade and Shizune, they altered the memories of the two while sedated so they could never try to pin the crime on Hinata. As far as the two girls knew, a sparring accident that kicked in later had led to the secret fact that neither could bear children. Ino's condition, however, was temporary due to Hinata hitting several inches higher than she did with Sakura and with less chakra into the strike. In addition to that, Ino's view in life about her hatred for Naruto and him being the demon rather than a demon container changed completely due to Kurenai's help via a powerful genjutsu, which allowed Ino see the light of her arrogance. It wasn't long before Ino had made a deeply meaningful apology to her friends, if only in secret to them, while keeping up the facade in front of her mother. Sakura, however, like her now barren womb, was a hopeless cause, as her large forehead's power against such a revelation involving genjutsu prevented the pink-haired girl to see clearly. Though considering the girl's mother was just like her, it was no real surprise that such an attempt had failed, since Sakura was so shallow to begin with. Still, no matter how things were or how you looked at it, the situation as whole had made the life of Hyuga Hinata brighten immensely. She was seen by one person, who saw that she had practically been skipping with joy, as if all was right with her world or getting as close to it as possible. Indeed, the lives of the people in Konoha were becoming strange indeed. Land of water at the moment. Are you sure we're headed in the right direction, Yakiru? Said Kenpachi, looking around trying to find gates leading to the capital Wataga of Water Country. Sure Ken-chan. I can tell because of my female fox intuition, said Yakiru, smiling at Uzumaki Kenpachi, who was getting a bit annoyed at being lost. I'm beginning to think your female fox intuition is just as lost as we are, said Kenpachi, earning him a cute scowl of a pout from Yakiru. That's mean, Ken-chan. Just because you don't have a sense of direction doesn't mean you have to pin the blame on me, said Yakiru before pointing him in another direction. And you wonder why I can't raise a kid, thought Kenpachi to Zangetsu, who just shook his head in wonderment at the boy once known as Naruto and how he was getting lost on the road of life. Naruto, in all seriousness, I need to ask you a question, thought Zangetsu, remembering how his vessel told him he wanted to go back to Konoha in 3 years. What about Zangetsu-sama? Thought Naruto, hoping that he would finally get to Wataga or Mist Village soon. You told me before that when you return to Konoha in 3 years you would become the Hokage like you dreamed you would. Do you really wish to become Hokage, or is that still a part of the old you that you won't lay to rest? Thought Zangetsu, looking up from his book titled, Fox Girls and Their Mood Swings, by Yuko Kurama. Naruto's physical form stopped walking, and if Yakiru or anyone else were to look at his face you would see it was a look of someone half deep in thought and half spaced out. Ken-chan, are you all right? Said Yakiru, wondering why Kenpachi stopped walking towards their destination. Quiet, said Kenpachi, his face being entirely serious despite the girl not seeing through the mask, though Yakiru knew instinctively in her mind that when he was like this she should not say anything. What did you ask me, Zangetsu-sama? Thought Naruto, as he walked over to the fox, who continued to look at the boy above his book. After all is said and done, do you really want to become Hokage of Konoha? I'm asking you this because you know as well as I do that once you are done with your vengeance there won't be much of a village to rule. Not to mention the timetable you set for your revenge is extremely thin at best, which means you won't be staying in this country for too long. You are on an island that is isolated from the other countries until you decided to travel back to them, and when you do your enemies will be waiting for your arrival, waiting to see what you do next. You set a timetable which needs more planning than just coming back in 3 years, killing most of the people in the village, and then rule over the remains. There is no logic in the final part, and thus in lies my question to you, do you still want to be Hokage of the Leaf Village? Thought Zangetsu, giving Naruto a hard stare to persuade the boy in telling him the truth. Naruto thought about what Zangetsu just said and realized the Demon Lord was right on the money in regards to the question. Why did he want to become Hokage of Konoha? To protect what was precious. They were too few, and probably even fewer than before now that they knew the truth about him and Zangetsu in his stomach. For people to see him as him and finally be acknowledged as the greatest. One of Sasuke's fangirls had a better chance at becoming the Hokage instead of him with all the fools on the council. Because it was his dream to be Hokage. No, that dream was the dream of the old Naruto, who had died at the hands of his own sensei, who hated him like all the other people in the village. The truth was that Uzumaki Naruto's dream of being the next Hokage of Konoha was dead, just like the person the name represented. However, as he realized that Naruto, or rather the man that replaced Naruto now named Kenpachi, felt like the last part of his old self had died then and there, but not in a painful way like he imagined it would. No, the feeling was that of a quiet death, like an old man has on his deathbed breathing his last breath before passing on into the next world. Like the last chain of his old persona had finally broken, freeing him from an invisible weight of the dream he once tried so hard to make a reality his whole life. You're right, Zangetsu-sama, I don't want to become Hokage of the Leaf. What I want is something similar yet different, thought Uzumaki Kenpachi, looking at the figure before, who raised an eyebrow at the response. Oh, you want to be a Kage of another village, thought Zangetsu, looking at the boy in a new light while the spiritual form of the sword named Kenpachi looked at his vessel with interest. Yes, but I'm not simply going to join a village to become a Kage. No, that's not how I am going to achieve that goal at all. I am going to build my own village. And I know the perfect name for this village, since it will be perfect for me since I have his seal on my stomach. The name of my all-powerful, unrivaled hidden ninja village will be the village hidden in the Shinigami, and I am going to be known as the first Shikage, or otherwise known as the Death Shadow, thought Kenpachi, laughing at the thought, and soon found that he was now laughing in the physical world too. What's so funny, Ken-chan? Said Yakiru curiously at her father-like figure, who now had a smile on his face even though his mask hid it when he looked at her. Nothing, Yakiru, I just realized some things about myself. No need to worry, I'm fine now, let's get to our destination, said Uzumaki Kenpachi, running faster than before with Yakiru clinging to his shoulder and squealing happily at the speed he is now going. Unknown to either of the two, another figure was watching from the trees above them and looking at them carefully like a cat does its prey. For a kid he's pretty intimidating, but for all I know the mask-wearing boy could be weak, or the two could be members of that ruthless Akatsuki organization that's hunting me. The boy's chakra that he is admitting is strangely different from that of a normal person's chakra, and so is the fox-looking girl's chakra for that matter. I'll have to keep an eye on them for now and see what turns up, thought the figure before stealthily leaping through the trees while observing the two below his or her presence. Somewhere in the depths of Water Country, a female figure with long brown hair and red tattoo-like marks on her face felt a shiver down her spine. Something is going to happen soon, but whether it's good or bad I do not know, thought the woman before reaching for a framed picture of her old village showing her a black-haired kid with Senbon needle in his mouth, a silver-haired masked kid, and a blonde-haired man above them that was their Junin instructor. Why do I have this feeling that something from my past is about to collide with me? Are you somehow responsible, Namikaze-sensei? Said the woman out loud, as if the older, wiser man in the picture could talk back, and as she did many times before, wish it did. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like, comment and subscribe, as well as checking out the author on fanfiction.net.